Hey, it's the Latino Newsletter podcast. That's right, it's a show about us all the time. I'm your host, Julio Ricardo Varela. A special thanks to the generous support from the Latino Community Foundation for season 1 of this podcast. You can learn more about the Latino Community Foundation at latinocf.org. All right, kids, this is episode 7, Siete. And if you're new to the podcast, the best thing you can do for us is follow it and listen to all the previous episodes as well. I promise they're a lot of fun. So let's just get to today's show because it's clear from Tuesday's presidential debate that U.S. Latinos, Latinos in this country still aren't there when it comes to political power and representation. It doesn't even feel like a hot take anymore. It feels like a truth. We're not there yet when it comes to political power, representation. It's one of the reasons why I formed the Latino Newsletter, to try to push that narrative that we do have power, we do have agency, we do have representation, we are change makers. But part of the problem of all this is how news media continues to ignore our community, not only as an audience, but also as news producers and publishers. So here's one stat that I want to share with you. It's from last year's Latino Donor Collaborative, National Association of Hispanic Journalists, Latinos in Journalism report. There's a 2023 report from the LDC and NAHJ. Those are their acronyms. And I'm just going to quote one finding from it. It basically says in the report that across 22 major digital news sites, there are 0 Latino editors-in-chief and 0 Latino executive editors. That might have changed a little bit this year, but I doubt it. Especially in a 2024 election cycle. I actually think news becomes less diverse and not more diverse. But anyway, we have 2 fabulous guests who are doing something about that, about changing this problem. And they are the co-founders of the new Latino Media Consortium, the LMC, that, full disclosure, the Latino Newsletter is a founding member of, along with other fantastic outlets. We've actually had 2 of them on the show, Conecta Arizona, Maritza, and Pulso by Liz Alarcón. Oh, and Cristina Escobar, Latino Media Co. They've all been on the show, and we're going to bring others on the show from the consortium. So let's get into it. So our first guest is Lucy Flores, one of my OG digital media friends. Lucy is the co-founder of Luz Media, L-U-Z, Luz, light, Luz Media. She's a licensed Nevada lawyer and one of the first Latinas ever to be elected to the Nevada state legislature. And after breaking barriers in politics, Lucy began her career as a digital media executive and entrepreneur, co-founding Luz Media in 2018. And like I mentioned, she is a co-founder of the Latino Media Consortium. Lucy Flores, welcome to the Latino Newsletter.
Hola, Julio. Thanks for having me.
Our second guest is Amanda Zamora, or Amanda Zamora, living the bilingual life. Amanda is the founder and principal of Agencia Media, which is a consultancy that helps organizations drive narrative change and civic engagement. And before Amanda launched Agencia this year, she spent nearly 25 years in the news business, most recently as the founding publisher of the 19th News, which is a fantastic outlet. And Amanda is also a co-founder of the Latino Media Consortium. Amanda, hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, so happy to be here.
Okay, we're just going to dive in. So how best to explain the Latino Media Consortium to any new person who hasn't been on the internet in the last week? Lucy, why don't you start?
Oh boy. All right. Well, let's see. Honestly, the most simplest and easiest way to explain it is that we are just a collective of individual publishers and media professionals who got together. I kind of tell everyone it's like a book club, only instead it's a bunch of publishers who are trying to fundamentally change the structure of Latino media for all 66 million Latinos in the entire United States. So no big deal.
That's a hell of a book club. All right, continue.
But that is essentially what we are. And the purpose, of course, the most important purpose of all of this is really, look, my background is in politics. I think most people know that about me. I got my start in organizing, and that's what this is. This is basically saying we are stronger together. As individuals, it's just such a lonely experience. The Latino media landscape is just so almost non-existent for us. And so as individuals, frankly, we're not that strong, right? But as a collective, we are a force. And the whole purpose of coming together as a group of incredibly intelligent and powerful and talented publishers, Latino publishers, digital media, was for us to go out there and say, hey, listen, there's this unprecedented amount of money out there that is being focused on uplifting and saving, frankly, the American media landscape. And Latinos are a part of that. And so together as a force, we are just making a statement that we cannot save American media without also proportionately investing in Latino media. And that's it.
Amanda, how would you explain it and add to this?
Yeah, I mean, all of that. And we have a goal of raising $100 million over the next 5 years to invest in a Latino media infrastructure that is fundamentally more responsive to the needs of the diversity of the Latino electorate, news consumers in this country. We're not a one-size-fits-all community, as all of you well know, but unfortunately, the media landscape seems a bit outdated, as if we, prefer to get our news still through print and broadcast. And we know the majority of Americans want and get their news on their phones. And so I think that's the other thing that we're really focusing on is really trying to develop this next generation of Latino media operators who are really digital first and adaptive to Latino audiences, whether they want to be getting their news in English or Spanish, whether they're national or local. We want to build this diverse ecosystem of Latino-owned media that can really serve the needs of readers in this moment in time. We were just talking about this back and forth on Twitter this week, right? Like, we see it in this election cycle. Latinos are continually lied to and about, and we want to be telling our own stories. We are telling our own stories, and now we need to raise the kind of capital that we deserve to make sure that those stories, first of all, reach the folks that we need them to reach, and that our business operations are sustainable.
All right. Spoken like true co-founders of a consortium, of a massive book club. But Amanda, to stick on this, the official announcement was made last Thursday. We have been involved. The Latino Newsletter has been involved since the beginning. You all invited me. I didn't even have an outlet yet. I was like, I'm going to create the Latino Newsletter now to be part of this consortium. You guys want me to be the digital Yoda. And I was like, no, I want to create my own thing as well. But how's the reaction been, Amanda? Like, can you share any specifics about the last week?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're still our digital Yoda, no matter what. We're keeping you as that. But
okay.
The response has been amazing. I mean, we're getting a lot of response, from the funding community who's seeing this and saying, yes, that we absolutely need something like this. And we're really encouraged by the conversations that we've got lined up. And also, I think, frankly, from publishers and young journalists and the journalism community writ large, who is like, thank you. Media is a tough business. You both know this.
Facts. I
don't have to explain that to you two or probably anyone listening to this podcast. And I think, for Latinos, who want to be in this business, what we're doing really is like, it's a bright light. I mean, I feel like both of you, this entire group has been a bright light for me, literally personally. And I'm starting to see that kind of magic, frankly, like translate. Like, people are like, yes, how can we help? How can we be involved?
Yeah.
So that's been so encouraging.
Good. Lucy, what about you? What have you seen the last week that gives you hope?
I mean, I really just want to underscore what Amanda just said. I think that, as I mentioned earlier, and as Amanda mentioned as well, that as a independent media publisher, it has just been such a backbreaking, lonely, arduous. How many other synonyms can I come up with for absolutely horrible, right? Like experience and existence, trying to lift up a new media entity that is trying to not only disrupt false narratives and harmful narratives about Latinas, specifically in the US, but also reach as many Latinas as possible with good stories, with information, with news, et cetera. And it really does sometimes feel like pushing this massive boulder up a mountain that's never, ever going to move. And so realizing that the response has been overwhelmingly positive, supportive, and really, like, the through line has constantly been, it's about time. And why wasn't this done, and why, how is this only being done now? So
Yeah, I hear you.
I do want to do a really quick shout out though, because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Like when you're building something so, again, new, shouldn't be new. But, to have the initial support of Maria Rodriguez over at the Valiente Fund, and Julian Castro and Christian Arana over at the Latino Community Foundation, as initial supporters, and saying like, yes, we not only do we believe in this, but we are going to help fund this so that you can get this off the ground. I think that speaks volumes to again, like, this isn't just about the rah-rah, it's also about people who are willing to put some capital behind what we're doing and who understand that we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And $100 million sounds like a big number, but the biggest thing that I push back against when we say 100 million is that it's absolutely not a big number. It is just proportionate. That's it. It's no more, it's no less. If we're talking about a $500 million investment, and this is just for one particular initiative, right? Like, there's much more money out there than $500 million.
Yeah, that you're mentioning Press Forward. You're mentioning Press Forward, the 500 million. Yeah.
Yes, correct. But it's not, of course, just limited to Press Forward. It's much bigger than that, of course. And so if Latinos are close to 20% of the population, then 20% of 500 million is 100 million. It's some basic math, right? So I don't think it's a big number at all. In fact, if you look at how we have been funded in the past and how much investment has been done in the past, we should have hit 100 million a long time ago.
We got some things to make up
like
for.
We're catching up.
Yeah. No, you're right. So it's interesting you say this because, again, having been one of the inaugural founding members and the group, and seeing all the sharing and the perceptions that people have, and already there's people that are like, this is great, and then they're like, there's always a section of the internet that doesn't want anyone to succeed, so you just have to ignore it. You mentioned journalism, you mentioned media, you mentioned nonprofits. We talk about the limited pool of funding. Mm-hmm. How do we push through that, Amanda, those blockers that seem to distract us?
I mean, I think part of our solution here is going in together. And, we've talked to publishers who, frankly, I mean, in the nonprofit space, I'll speak to that. And Lucy can talk more maybe about the corporate space. And but it's to get on the calendars of these funders, and they've got their own timelines, their own requirements. It's a hustle, and it can be intimidating in its own right. And then if you're pitching something that they don't quite understand, or they don't take it seriously, let's say Spanish language media or whatever the case may be, like, this is a group in a room where we get it, we get each other, and we're advocating for each other, and we're telling the story together. And I do think that makes a difference in terms of the attention paid, as opposed to feeling like you're walking alone into that room and making a pitch. Mm-hmm. So I won't deny, like, one of the main reasons that I felt really called to work on this with Lucy was, at the 19th News, I started doing a lot more work with publishers in the, toward the last year that I was there in partnerships. And you just start talking to more folks and realizing, not everybody has the same access to capital, obviously. And so that's just a fundamental barrier. Inequity in the system is real. And that's one of the reasons that we're coming together, because we feel like we're stronger making this case together.
Yeah. And Lucy, what about you? I mean, from your perspective, you're coming in from for-profit, whatever. I wouldn't say it's a different lane. It's in the same highway. So what are the blockers for you?
Well, I would say that right now we're experiencing, and this is just media in general, this isn't just Latino media, but we're very much, I think, in such a massive crisis that a big part of that is also understanding that news and information content has dramatically changed, both in terms of how people interpret it, but also how it's defined. Every single person brings their perspective to whatever it is that they're creating. So bottom line, I think, when we talk about the blocker question, is that as a Latina independent news and information content publisher, I'm constantly also having to make the argument, and there's lots of publishers out there who are in the same boat, who are having to really defend the work that we create, the fact that our work is fact-based, the fact that it might not check all your traditional boxes, some of our content for news, but it is in fact informing, it is in fact helping, it is in fact, achieving all of the same goals.
Right.
So, and I think also for for-profit media, we do a lot of the same, if not sometimes exactly the same that nonprofit media does. And so when we thought about the consortium, it was really important for us to try to have the most diverse. We have a set of criteria. It's all in our deck that you can find at We Are Latino Media.
We Are Latino Media.
Latinomedia.org, Lucy.
Wow. We Are Latinomedia.org. I say it all the time.
It was a big launch week. We're still tired. We need to catch up on naps.
No, but there was a lot of work.
But now you're really going to remember it, because we all screamed it at the same time.
Latinomedia.org. Anyway, continue, Lucy.
So download our deck. Our criteria are there. But what I was going to say is that the most important, a really important aspect to that was that we did want a diverse representation of what is being dubbed local news versus national news and information content, Spanish language, English language, bilingual content. What else? For-profit, nonprofit.
Diversity of content too.
Diversity of
because
content
you brought
as well,
in
correct.
Politics, culture,
all kinds.
like entertainment journalism. Cristina Escobar, who I've known forever, and the fact that Latino Media Co is part.
And she's incredible.
She's
an incredible writer. She's an amazing writer.
I was so excited when I published her for Latino Rebels like several years ago, and I said, Cristina, just remember me when you're reviewing for the New York Times, like 15 years from now. She's that good.
She's an incredible writer, but also she's training the next generation of voices.
Exactly.
She is, building up this cohort of freelance writers in media and film criticism. Valeria is doing the same thing with Et Palabra, like training up the next generation of
Maritza,
and
Liz, Paola,
El
Tecolote, Erica, you all, Lucy, you.
I think that's all of us.
Paola.
I think we got them all. We got Paola.
We got Paola. We got Paola like 3 times.
I know. It's like our Slack channel. That's where the hard work happens on our Slack channel. Listen, any final thoughts, Amanda? I mean,
yes, go to wearelatinomedia.org, get the deck. The case is laid out there. Put your email in and get updates about how we are growing. We hope that there'll be opportunities to volunteer and contribute and help partner with us to grow this thing. And yeah.
All right. So I'm going to ask one last question. I'll start with you, Amanda. What would be the dream a year from now?
The dream a year from now is that this inaugural cohort has been funded with transformative investment, each one, We're going for a minimum of $400K per publisher. We think that they deserve nothing less, and they are moving and grooving on these North Star goals that are going to help them sustain their media platforms well into the future, and that we are actively recruiting for the next cohort of publishers, and that it is significantly bigger than this first one because we've really figured out kind of what the key ingredients are to make this work. That's where we are going to be a year from now, not what I wish or hope. That is what will be happening.
Oh, there you go. So it's not a dream. Lucy, any final thoughts?
I would just like this podcast to end up on any number of billionaires' listening list. And I would love for them to just write us $100 million check because they can. And that would be great if they could just do that ASAP.
We're clipping that, Joaquin. And we're gonna talk to our billionaire friends, of which we have none, but
Mark
you'll
Cuban,
never know.
are you listening? Hello.
Mark
never
Cuban.
know.
Hey, I know his brother. I've known him on Twitter forever. And so that might be the end. Anyway, Lucy, Amanda, thank you so much for being on the Latino Newsletter podcast with me.
Yes, thank you for having us, Julio.
Okay, there it is. LMC in the house. Yeah, it's pretty ambitious, forward-thinking. I'm kind of stuck with Lucy's question of why did it take so long to do this? Hey, here we are. And I firmly believe, especially when it comes to independent journalism, it's better to work together than work individually. So I'm personally super excited about the LMC. The Latino Newsletter is excited as well. And we're going to continue to share updates about the Latino Media Consortium. And fingers crossed, this could lead to some funding for the Latino Newsletter that can be transformational. That's the hope. All right, so the Latino Newsletter is produced by me, Julio Ricardo Varela, and my homie, Joaquin Cotler. We're counting down the days for Knicks preseason. So go New York, go New York, go. The mixing and sound design is by Joaquin as well. And the music you're hearing is by Cast of Characters on Soundstripe. You can now donate to us directly at the latinonewsletter.org. And if you're listening on Spotify, there's a donate link in the show notes. You can do that as well. And if you like what you heard, rate, review us, share this podcast. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio. We're on Audible. We're on YouTube. And we're on other podcast platforms. Just find us, the Latino Newsletter. We're on Twitter, profile Lat Newsletter, and we're on every other social platform with the handle The Latino Newsletter. And if you want to send a comment or connect with me, you can email me at julio@thelatinonewsletter.org. We'll be back next week with another show. Thank you so much for listening. Peace out, y'all.